Why were those two expelled and you weren't?
Well, I think it's pretty clear. I'm a 6-year-old white woman, and they are two young black men. In listening to the questions and the way they were questioned and the way they were talked to, I was talked down to as a woman, mansplained to, but it was completely different from the questioning that they got. And this whole idea that, why, that you have to almost assimilate into this body to be like us.
And I think a lot of people probably agree with her that it is interesting that she, of the three, survived this effort. Now, the Republican speaker, Cameron Sexton, he doesn't like what she just said. He said that's a false narrative on her part. She's trying to put political racism in this, which there was nothing on this. They were all given due process. Were they? Is this the process that is due in your state? Justin Jones represented 78,000 people in Nashville. Justin Pearson represented 70,000 in Memphis. They don't have representation now. They were not asked about this. None of the Republicans voting this gave a damn what they thought about literally any of this. They're gonna find out very soon what the people of those districts think about it when they return those representatives to the state legislature. But he didn't care. But bear in mind, if you wanna understand who this guy is, you probably have an inkling from that quote. But he also said originally, days ago, what they did in that original protest was equivalent, at least equivalent, maybe worse, depending on how you look at it, to doing an insurrection in the state capitol. So if you felt burdened by the fear that perhaps some respect was due to this man, don't worry, none is. He's an absolute buffoon.
Yeah, and it's not just Sexton. They're setting up. One thing you're forgetting about this is that it's a First Amendment thing, right? There is due process in the Tennessee legislature. There is an ethics committee. There is a way. Even Justin Pearson said that we actually broke some rules of decorum. We broke some of the rules of the House. But there is a process for that. There is a process for handling that, to have it investigated, to have a censure, whatever it is, to expel members of the House because of this and because of rallying people. In 1966, Julian Bond, the late Julian Bond, who was a civil rights leader, he was voted into the Georgia House of Representatives. So Julian Bond was going to be a member of the Georgia House. He was vehemently opposed to the Vietnam War. He was African American, unusual at the time in the Georgia legislature. They voted to not seat him because of his vocal opposition and acceptance for people who did not want to register, not wanted to be conscripted into that war. The district court upheld what the House did in Georgia, and then the Supreme Court took up the case. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Julian Bond by 9-0, 9-0 in 1966. And they seated him, and he was sworn in, and he had a long career in both the House of Representatives in Georgia and the Senate in Georgia. And that's what's gonna happen here. These people will be lionized for what they have done, and those other people who oppose them, it's just gonna take a little while to have that happen. Those other people will be a laughingstock, not in their district. We've gerrymandered the hell out of this country, so it doesn't matter what you say when you go back. If you're Andrew Farmer, who spoke down to Justin Pearson last night, you go back to Sevierville, Tennessee, they're still gonna love you. But the point is, on a national stage and in the national narrative of what this story is, they're gonna be looking like fools for a long time.
I completely agree. I mean, there was an argument about whether there was due process served from the beginning of this hearing, right? When there was an ask to put in evidence, right, that hadn't been reviewed. No one knew if it had been altered or what was happening. So it was just a sham from jump, right? And I think it's a little disingenuous to say like there was no racial intent. I think that's one of the issues when it comes to proving intent, when it comes to discrimination and things like that, right? It's post-emancipation and Jim Crow, white people thought that we can understand the intent of the Negro, right? Because we know how they are and we know that they're animals and they're this, and so we we have to control them. And so it gave that type of energy when you listen to the questioning, right, that was asked, right, when the representatives were accused of throwing temper tantrums. And to equate this to January 6th is even more disrespectful, and again, the racism is showing, right? Because on January 6th, what we saw were people storm the Capitol, they were violent, they were deliberate about they were gonna be violent. We heard the things that they said, they had weapons and everything like that. These representatives went to the floor, right? They were out of order, but they had bullhorns and they had signs with them and they spoke, right? And what they were speaking to was the fact that they weren't even allowed to say what they needed to say when the time was appropriate for them to do that, right? And so I think, yes, we're getting caught up in this and the racial aspect of it, which is wrong, but at the core of it is democracy is being challenged, because if they are elected to represent their constituents and to go on that floor and say what their constituents want, and they are being prevented from saying that, it is more than just these two young men who are in trouble. This is a lot of people who are going to face this type of discrimination, and I think the Republican Party is being very open and honest about the fact that this is a move that we're going with, and we're gonna do it no matter what anybody has to say about it. And in the sense of Gloria, like, I don't really know how I feel about her, because I feel like she was very intentional about not speaking when she was on that floor. She made it very clear during her arguments that I didn't speak. I stood there with my colleagues, right? She came, she had counsel during her portion. I'm not sure if the other representatives knew that that was an option for them. So in a sense, it just feels like they were kind of hung out to dry in that area. But this is a learning lesson for us all. And I think for other representatives in other states, especially in southern states, to have all their ducks in a row, because the challenges are coming.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the other aspect of this. It's intrinsic to it all, the racial component of it. I mean, this is Tennessee after all. But also just like, this is the same, so they expelled 2 duly elected representatives who had done effectively nothing wrong, nothing that a regular person would give a damn about. In the same week that they lost a major Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, and before she's even seated, they're already talking about impeaching her. In a state where the state legislative races, the congressional map has been so gerrymandered that all of this is pointless, doesn't matter at all what effectively happens there, and hasn't for a decade. And I just feel like we're seeing more and more of that. How many governors have we had, governors races, Republican governors getting beat by Democrats, and then, oh, oops, before they're seated, they don't have any powers anymore. Kind of feel like that's becoming pretty routine. Major ballot initiatives with the people disagreeing with the state legislature or saying that they need to act on something, and then they just don't do it. Like, I feel like this is becoming very, very casual for the Republicans to just not even feel like they need to pretend to support popular democracy at this point. And then of course you have the fact that they will not admit that they've lost in literally any case, no matter how badly they're destroyed. And so I feel like this is a combination of a couple of incredibly significant problems. And in the same way that I said, I think that they looked on those representatives with disgust, they definitely looked on the protesters with disgust, because they were breaking decorum. The decorum is supposed to be, you get gunned down on a regular basis, we give you thoughts and prayers, and then you shut the hell up about it. We're not gonna do anything, and we're really sick of having to pretend briefly that we're gonna do something, where like we don't tweet about AR-15s for a couple days, or we have to dodge questions about it. We don't wanna do that anymore. So don't march into our Capitol, don't chant, don't have your signs. You're just gonna continue to die. That's the way this thing goes. Either because of the campaign checks we've been given by the NRA, or just because our base kind of likes it. And it's not even popular generally anymore, but we have to make it through a Republican primary. So I guess we're fine with kids' heads being blown off. So yes, I do think that they have a concern for decorum, and I think it's awesome that more and more young people don't give a damn about it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.